Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Solidarity Live. I'm here with two of my favorite people, Alex and Brock, and we're here to talk about some of the more insane things that have happened this week. And at this point, it's sort of difficult to keep track of what really meets that rubric. Would you agree with that, Alex?
Yeah, each week is the same as the last, just a sort of nonstop shit show piling on itself. And just working to crush our spirits, which is why we're not going to let that happen, and why I'm so happy to be joined today by Brock Butler, troubadour and rock star from Perpetual Groove, and just an all-around amazing guy and musician who created the intro music for our show, Jocelyn, which I know when I first sent you the thematics of it, I think your reply was in all caps with some exclamation points, if I remember, right?
Yes, that is correct. I do remember that. I felt that way on the inside, too.
So, Brock, thank you so much for joining us here on Solidarity Live.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see everybody.
So let's talk a little bit about just what Brock, you and I have known each other for a long time. When we were doing the show, you know, I'm sort of obsessed with Solidarity Forever. That's where Jocelyn and I, created this show to really push solidarity. That's how we get through these difficult times. And so I asked you, hey, would you be interested in producing the intro music for the show? And also, I've been watching you on social media and performing during this pandemic. And it's sort of, I had this both sides. It gives me and my wife, Layla, and our family, both my kids love it as well, gives us a bit of, moments of relief, actually, that music actually has this amazing balm for the soul quality to it. But also really can focus some rage too. Like Solidarity Forever is a really powerful song for uniting us. So I asked you to produce it. Can you tell us a little bit about the process? Because what you came up with was incredibly unique.
Well, sure. And I'll touch on two things that you just mentioned there. The in general gratitude I have to be able, my position, even as it relates to the other members of Perpetual Groove, since I'm the singer and guitarist, it's a bit more forgiving for me to still be able to get some musical therapy and satisfaction in doing these digital busks and stuff like that, as compared to, say, like our drummer, for example. I mean, I'm sure Albert could do something, but it's something that I've been able to do even before COVID stuff. I used to just do random streams just simply because I enjoy doing it. And if it's been any comfort to you and Layla and whoever else, it's been that and more for me. It's helped me remember what day it is. And I try to, keep adding new covers, use it as an opportunity as best I can. And then when you asked about doing the theme song for Solidarity Forever, and the example you sent me, was more of the traditional old-timey version of it, and my mind immediately went to things kind of like stuff that I love about like Wu-Tang Clan and Moby, is when they take, I think it's such a cool sound when you take the old kind of crackly lo-fi stuff and try to marry it with a more contemporary palette of tone colors. And then I asked you about the emotional context of it, of like, was this going to be unionizing proper or solidarity in a bigger scheme, which I think we've, even since you've started this and since the song has been done, we've seen bigger, like the moms and dads out in Portland with the leaf blowers and the wall of moms kind of stuff, that all of that kind of lands in the same, when people get together, it's like, well, fine, if you're going to rough up these kids, let's see how the optics of it are when you have the moms and dads out there, and with leaf blowers of all things. It's just the best.
Defeating the fascists with leaf blowers.
Yeah, and what a perfect symbolic tool for the suburban dads out there. We're gonna get a leaf blower, but that's so when I put the music to it, I wanted it to have a something that related to what I perceived the mood to be out there. And it could have been the more straight up, like, unionizing for more in the Bernie Sanders sense, which is amazing and great. But at this point now, we've had other examples of protesters and what can be accomplished through numbers.
Well, and you really did such a good job, and we all appreciate you so much. The art and protest movement are not separate movements. Do you feel like that as an artist?
I do, and at the same time, I feel like I'm constantly trying to walk a balance. So when we talk about this week specifically in a social media sense, I try to make the things I put out there most of the time to be something that'll cheer up anybody. Like, I don't want to set the table and immediately be kind of like, if you're this kind of person, my music's not for you. Because I think if I put it out, the broadest intent of what I do is that I do it because it makes me happy, it makes me feel better, and I hope it has a similar effect for everybody. Even someone that might not share the same views as me. But then other times I can't help myself. And I've got it, like, when somebody floats the idea of postponing elections, I realized, like, without even thinking about it, suddenly it's not my little chorky Kingsley or music or whatever else. I was kind of like, he has to go and let my what I stand for be known. But I do think that maybe in both respects that the arts are a way to do that, because who knows, maybe somebody who's not in their day-to-day real mindful or active politically, maybe they'll realize, maybe two people might meet and realize that they have more in common than not. So it might be a good neutral ground for people to realize that where we can accomplish reaching out to people rather than saying that it's just for this or just for that. So I'm always a very long-winded way of saying I'm always torn on how much I want to I think people know where I stand, and then contributing to the music for this program and things like that. It's certainly what I would ever let my music or Perpetual Groove's music be involved with, the things that we would contribute our energy and our art towards. Like we're doing something for the Free Peachtree Project, which is our buddy Witt has started this group to fight against voter suppression tactics, in particular in the Atlanta and Southeast area, where they seem to be the most overt. I mean, they're everywhere, but that's one place it's like, it's so obvious. At least to me, it seems that way.
Oh, they don't try to hide. They are. Or last show we talked about this, that the new thing that's going on is the brazenness is the armor that they're wearing. What about? I just want to touch on this because we've skirted around it a little bit, but I mean, the economy we just got the numbers that show, we've never seen anything like this before. It's bigger than the Great Depression. The GDP fell 33%, 10% last quarter. And, people are like, oh, that's 33% an annualized rate. Let me go a little economics here for all of those people before they comment in the comment. Yes, it's an annualized rate, but we're seeing shocks now. The $600 UI plus up was just not enacted. It's going to lapse. That's in this quarter. So what we saw with 33%, a 10% last quarter, we're going to see something like that this quarter too. So the annualized rate is much more telling. It's bogus to say that it's not a real number. 33%. What that means everybody's hit. And I will say some of the parts where I get, I have to really remind myself to get through We Need Solidarity. It's when I get another notice about music. It's actually canceling this, no jazz fest, right? No, and each one
it's
like a body blow.
Yeah. And I have a bit of an information line of when I see people talking, it's tough because I'll see people wanting to be hopeful and optimistic. It's like, oh yeah, maybe this will happen in October. Even within the organization of Perpetual Groove, we've had our weekly meetings, and just to see what are we hearing? Like, is this realistic to even do any are we going to announce potential tour dates? Because eventually it's just going to be like announcement, postponement, announcement, postponement. So we, a couple months ago, all just said like, look, let's just say that nothing's going to happen before this date. So when I see people wanting to be hopeful about certain things opening up or getting back on track, it's what I'm hearing. The goalpost is moving further. It's, there hasn't really been any surprisingly good news or sooner than expected news since this all started. We were in the van on a way to a festival in West Virginia when it happened. We were 2 hours up the road.
Well, you had to cancel your whole tour.
Oh, right? Yeah. We were going to go do a whole back in May.
A new album, right?
Oh, yeah. We had a show with Humphreys in Atlanta that was really exciting. Our first proper West Coast tour, which of course started in Seattle, typical, which as far as that first nursing home up there, I was like, I blame us. We tried to book a show in Seattle, and we've forsaken us all.
Well, and what is it? Sorry, Alex, did I interrupt you?
No, I interrupted you, Jocelyn. That's usually how it goes.
Not true. No. Brock, so I think about this a lot for people in your situation, musicians. I mean, you are people who are incredibly reliant on crowds to be able to do what you do for a living. What is it like to be a musician in an era where it's like, okay, maybe we'll be back to normal in a year, maybe. How are you handling that?
I think that so far we've adapted pretty well, which doesn't mean it's not aggravating. Each time that we thought we would do okay, let's check back in and see where we are after this month. Maybe we can still save the end of summer. This is back in March. Maybe this, maybe that. And then you watch the dates of 2020 turn to 21. And so like, oh, this won't happen until then. So far, I've been doing all right as far as because I'm able to interact with people, so still get that component of it. But from a business model, it's really it's disheartening. And now I imagine we'll have a certain level of added stress, or depending on what happens with they already didn't keep the PUAs, the unemployment, whatever the three letters are, for depending on who you are and what your situation is. But everybody has at least remained mentally comfortable, because what are we going to do? I think everyone's been able to function up until now, but the longer it goes, the only thing we're talking about doing at this point is maybe getting the 4 band members together to do a stream.
Uh-huh.
And it's really thrown off I don't know, there's just so much to it, but it's definitely been tough. At first there was this kind of novel enjoyment of a challenge to adapt and improvise and say, okay, what can we do? We did a cover of kind of a mix of David Bowie's Heroes with a touch of the Peter Gabriel version. Everybody did their takes individually, and so we've still been able to make content. And believe me when I say that we tried to figure out a way to actually perform simultaneously, but I think that sound just doesn't travel. I mean, there's probably a novel way to do it, but not the way that we prefer. So I'm missing that element of playing with the guys, and Yeah, it's tough. And it seems like it might become even more stressful now, because at least there was a certain kind of budget that everybody could work with. And the fact that they did somewhat in my case, the unemployment assistance for someone who's an independent contractor. I was like, well, this is encouraging that they're not trying to block out if you haven't had a regular job, say, compared to a musician or any independent contractor. So I don't know.
It's a tough one. That's why I mean, like, I don't think this gets talked about enough in sort of in Jocelyn and mine's world of progressive politics, the idea of the impact on the creative class. I mean, without support, every venue will close. Every single one of them will close or transform into something else without support, because nowhere operates. There's no business that operates with the, like, well, we've got to bank away enough to keep going with no revenue for 18 months. You're like,
well, and it's really
Go
it's
ahead,
really
Jocelyn.
interesting that we have this standard for financial stability, which we apply to small venues and small individuals, but we don't apply to billion-dollar corporations.
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
They get bailed out, but your local music venue is supposed to apparently have 24 months in expenses stacked away. And it's incredibly frustrating.
The thing that keeps coming to my mind is, and this is somewhere back in the early bit of it, but I think the number was 3 trillion that they tossed to the stock market. Mm-hmm. They thought, like, we'll throw $3 trillion. They pissed away. And I think that maybe if it did anything, it was, almost comedically, like, on the chart, like, watch what 3 trillion does. And I keep thinking about how many places, small, and not just the venues themselves, and this is true for the band as well, like our tour manager and our crew. So we've done certain streams and other things that we've been able to, where if tips or if money has come towards the band, we're trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of. We're kind of in a fortunate position that our crew's small, so we can make sure everybody's doing okay. But if you're talking like a bigger production juggernaut kind of thing, where there's who I don't even know how many employees that a super, like, arena kind of tour, the numbers of people underneath that that are missing these things. And then you see an amount like $3 trillion get just kind of, and they toss that towards the market. But the topic of anything else, how could we possibly afford that? Imagine what 3 trillion could have done for setting up an infrastructure for school system, like make sure everybody's got access to online stuff. And I've got several educators in my family, and it's just, I just see it being so tough for everybody.
So we're in the tough part of the conversation. We're going to come out of that using the balm of music. If you're up for it, Brock, I'm going to ask you to give us a little solidarity and to demonstrate the power of music and why, through the struggles, we come together and we produce things to get through. That's what solidarity is. And there's a reason in the New Deal, in the Works program, there was a federal program for the arts. They actually understood that you cannot save a society, an economy, and anything if you don't have art.
That reminds me, like, one of the best lines, the movie Mr. Holland's Opus. Have you seen that? Richard Dreyfuss. And so at the end, like, the whole movie, he's the music guy at this high school. And towards the end, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, he looks at the upcoming budget, which cuts out the entire music program. And he says to the guy, he goes, you've been looking for a reason to get rid of me for years, and, like, you finally got it. And and the principal tries to make a case. He says, I love these kids just as much as you, but if I have to choose reading and arithmetic, that's what I'll choose. And Mr. Holland says, he goes, you can keep cutting music and the arts as much as you want. Eventually, these kids won't have anything to write about. I've always
I love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And in line with the one that always comes to my mind, which is apocryphally given to Nietzsche, but I think it's probably far older than that. And it's just, without music, life is unfair. I think of that often, that if it were not for music and art, I'm not actually sure that humanity would be worth all the effort, but it's through the crucible and the sort of alchemy of music that we can really see, I don't know, something beautiful, something worth it, something worth the difficultness of the struggle.
Well, and it's, oh no, I interrupted you again.
I was going to toss it to Brock there, but you toss it to Brock. I quoted Nietzsche, Jocelyn, so I know you have to get in on that one.
And I quoted Richard Dreyfuss.
I did want to say something because I'm just really struck as we're having this conversation. It's like there are two visceral responses that come up for me. It's like my American cultural conditioning, which is like, but money, like music and art, like aren't gonna make us more productive iPhones or whatever. And then the second response, which is like, we are so unaware of the fact that we've been brainwashed in this culture to have to defend our very humanity. Like every other civilized culture understands why the arts are important. They don't even have to have this conversation. And Renaissance era, whatever the hell, like the kings were always like throwing money into the artists because there was just this understanding that, like you guys are saying, without art, what like it should be in the glory of a civilization's interest to have these beautiful things, whether it's beautiful art or beautiful music. And Brock, thank you for doing that for us. And I apologize, Alex, for interrupting you.
But no pressure, Brock. You just got the weight of civilization on your shoulders.
I'm ready to go in, Coach. I'm ready to go in.
What I asked Brock to do is to actually play a little bit of the folk. You all heard the intro that Brock talked about that he created with from Solidarity Forever, and then I asked if he could play some of Solidarity Forever for us. So here it is,
and I would do that. And also, I'm still gonna get you a proper, clean recording, start to finish, of the more traditional version. So don't think I've forgotten you. Just had a cross-country drive. So thanks for having me on the show, guys. Jocelyn, nice chatting with you. Alex, I love you, buddy. And here's a song. Inspiration, the workers but Sarah. There can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet before sun earth is weaker than the strength of one. But the union marches on. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. The union makes us strong.
Hooray!
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Brock.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
A great version of one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, and I'm going to get you an early conversation that Alex and I had about it was that I wanted to give you a couple of different, like maybe one that's even just the guitar, no vocals. So if you ever wanted to have different options for bumper music, real interesting stuff, I'm sure.
The IWW
for the listeners at home,
the IWW is very happy with your rendition, Brock, and just something that you talked about, sort of the narrowness versus the broadness or profoundness of the solidarity that we're talking about, that song is. The Wobblies, whose song that is, weren't talking about an industry, and they weren't talking about one country. They were talking about all workers in the world uniting together to be an unstoppable force against the corrosiveness of these greedy liars on Wall Street. It was the same showdown of the people, the many versus the few and the powerful then as it is now, a little bit over 100 years later. And that's why I think the power of music to tie that historical thread, that we're still in the same fight. But
yeah. And it ranges as well to, musicians in particular have, publishing unions, ASCAP and BMI and stuff. And now with things like Spotify and Apple Music, that's still getting sorted out. And that usually people, they unionize no matter what all workers, artists as well. So
artists and the creative class being workers. That was why I really did want to bring you on.
Well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and I'm happy to be involved. And thanks for having me.
Thanks,
You're
Brock.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brock.
Have a beautiful day. Give them hell, make a difference, everybody.
Brock Butler, troubadour and rock star of Perpetual Groove, and I think most famously for creating the introduction to Solidarity Live with us. And Jocelyn, what are you coming out of that in terms of the creative class being, workers, honest workers who make their daily bread versus with labor versus these greedy liars, parasitic class who are making their money with money?
Well, I think it's really one thing that I always get hung up on when we have this conversation is the psychological disconnect we have between who does and does not provide value in an economy. We have this comfort level with the idea that finance bros are making, triple six figures and people who literally don't do anything other than gut the economic system that we all have to then live in. But then you have artists and musicians without whom we would not have the Netflix we binge every day and the Spotify we listen to and the
nothing
art
to write about.
Right. Nothing to write about. It's really interesting to me that art has been gaslit as a, useless field when we use art every day. Every single time you get on the internet and share your memes or watch your Netflix or listen to your music, that is art giving our life meaning, making our life more bearable. I mean, can you imagine having to get through all this without Netflix or music?
I'm not joking that I literally think that humanity would be irredeemable. I would definitely fight on the side of the robots in the inevitable conflict of the humans versus the robots if it wasn't for art and music. It's
totally.
It's that humans strive to capture beauty and share it with others. Carl Sagan said that's the entire purpose that you can find if you can't get down with a lot of other conceptions of faith and things. Just the idea that consciousness can appreciate beauty is something magnificent enough that you can actually have faith in it. And not to throw all of that in the hopper here, but before we turn to the ragey part.
What? No, I like this. This is good.
I know. It's nice to remember the why we're worth the struggle.
Well, and darling, I think that this is this is such an important conversation to have. I can feel this sometimes when, we're in this political media space and it's really easy to take the transcendence and the humanity out of politics, which is crazy because politics is literally just the organizing of human beings and what matters to them. And when you're talking about things like why we're here, which I absolutely agree, there is something, I don't know if you and I have ever had this conversation, but I feel like we may have after a couple drinks. You know how like in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, there's every single part of that book is quotable. But the part that really struck me the first time I read it was when he's writing about how you expect the burly prisoners in the concentration camps to fare best, because why wouldn't they? They're burly and muscular. But what he found over and over again was that the people who seemed to have the most resilience were the artists, the professors, the people who had something beautiful that they could contemplate while they're undergoing tremendous physical and psychological torture. And is that not our experience of the people we know? Like the people who are most resilient are the ones who seem to be most in touch with this idea of beauty, whether that means painting or music or writing something beautiful. That at the end of the day is the thing that ties us all together.
I love that. And, you know, we can soft side door into the rage portion by being like, the problem with too much of today is that beauty and art and what it is has been financialized or commodified.
Yes.
And what that does is it tries to extract value from this, which you can extract value from art, but it then commodifies it and says, this is the only purpose. And then we get, you know, like Netflix is super important and movies and television and music, but also some of the worst stuff comes from that as well, from the financialized side. Mm-hmm. And, you know, not to cast too many aspersions, but the Kardashians, that entire thing that is telling the American people that this gross materialism is the thing that assigns you value, is actually repugnant and reprehensible. But it's extremely lucrative because you can then just swap in any product and then it's printing money for those with money. I just think that it's why when I search for, you know, the beautiful things, it's very rarely going to find itself in that extractive part of the economy. Sometimes they get confused, they get wires crossed. So you get huge pop stars who are extremely subversive, Rage Against the Machine, for example. Not a pop star, but man, they became famous. And every time someone tweets about they got to get their politics out of their music or they're going to lose all of their fans, it's just, I explode with joy at how beautifully subversive that is. But just like the struggle that I think some of us are in the progressive political place, right, where it's sort of, we're fighting for humanity, programs that value the people over these plastic programs that just value its front groups and AstroTurf, and it's all set up to value the billionaires. It's just to suck money out versus what we have, which is true solidarity for the people, building things for the people. The same exact struggle, I believe, takes place in the creative class. It's sort of obvious, like obviously it does, because Brock and artists exist in the same reality as we do.
Well, and it's, you know, as you're talking, all I can think about is you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, there's a very bad thing that happens to the human psyche when the only things that have value are things you can put a dollar sign on, because there is no relationship. And if anything, there's an inverse relationship between that which is profitable and that which is beautiful and worthwhile. You know, and if you want to look at it from a pure advancement of humanity perspective, I mean, the reason the stereotype of the starving artist exists is because quite frequently the most transcendent, beautiful art isn't appreciated in its time. You know, all these, Alex, we love our France references. I mean, it's crazy, but I still think it's crazy whenever I see like Van Gogh in person to realize this guy died starving in Montmartre. Like, nobody gave a whatever about him, and now he's well recognized as one of the best artists of the past 400 years. And it's, you can't, I don't think that the Kardashians are going to be viewed in the same way 100 years from now.
It's a bet that I will gladly make, that in 400 years, the Kardashians will not be seen in the same light as Van Gogh, or Van Gogh, as they call him.
All right, I want to bet against that, but I can't because I agree with you.
I'm going to have to throw in my little plug for the Barnes collection in Philly. I don't think that it might be open for socially distanced viewing again. I think I saw that, but the Barnes collection, if you do want to see somebody who magically did basically find art contemporarily, it's one of the rarest stories there is. This man went, Albert Barnes, and he bought all of the masterpieces when no one knew they were going to be masterpieces, but he bought them all.
That's awesome.
So the Art of the Heist is the movie, the documentary about his collection. It's located in Philly, the Barnes collection. I feel like, Jocelyn, if you're okay with it, we should do one whole show on the Barnes collection.
I was about to say, we've got to do a heist episode now.
Okay, well, one on the Barnes and one on heist, because then we get to the Gardner heist, which is actually the genesis of all of my obsession with heists.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's the Gardner heist. It's the art heist where at the Gardner Museum, where they stole these masterpieces and then they vanished into thin air. And it's always, to me, it has a Burn the Library of Alexandria to it. Where I'm like, why did they do that? But I want to put a little bit, let's say we come back to Barnes collection and heists, because I do think it's critical that we talk about what happened this week.
Yes.
Because what Brock was talking, why are you apologizing? I was the one who was talking. I'm still talking. I should be apologizing for going on about heists and Barnes collection. But I want to bridge over to it by, Brock is an amazing artist. And Zoom will never do justice to music. It really, to me, right, you have to consume that music. There's a magic to it. If there is, it's one of the closest that we come to some sort of magical alchemy. But it's also a business. He's actually, right, he has a small business, the band members, the support staff, and their business has been massively disrupted. The entire industry has been disrupted. And without support by the government, which is ours, it's our government, just like all these other industries, it can't survive. And we just had the economy collapse 33%. It's bigger than the Great Depression. It's bigger.
And it's just, you're right. We do have to talk about rage and not just sunflowers, but I just can't process it. I can't wrap my mind, because look, do I know that Republicans don't care about women, minorities, people who are from other countries, the climate? Sure. But it's still like, wow, these people will watch the entire economy tank. Like the whole thing just going to go down. And this always fascinates me from a psychological perspective, because where are they going to go after this? Are they just going to, are they just going to like move to the Cayman Islands where all their money is and just like live like lords? I mean, the Caribbean isn't really the best place
to over be. What? Right?
Exactly.
Over what?
Exactly. It would be so much easier for them to just write a comprehensive budget that allows the middle class and working class to basically function. Because these people, we talk about this on the show all the time, capitalists do not create value. Workers create value that capitalists capitalize on. So these people, they can have their, dividends and portfolios all they want. But at the end of the day, we still need workers to go to the Amazons and to go to the Starbucks and whatever companies. At the end of the day, this economy is still based on the backs of workers. And if they don't have the basic support to pay their bills, this whole thing doesn't work.
Is collapsed. It's collapsed. And it's not in the future. Right now. So last month, a quarter of people or more, a quarter to a third of people could not pay their rent or mortgage. They missed the payment. This month, it's the beginning of the month, they're going to miss it again. And they cut the unemployment. They cut it. They cut unemployment. They didn't get it together. They had months, the Republican Senate had months to pull something off, and they did nothing. And so it's lapsed. 33% cratering of the economy, bigger than the Great Depression, more profound, deeper than the deepest part of the Great Depression, which took years to get there. This is months, and we're here. And that's with the extra $600 a week on unemployment. It was the only thing propping up the economy, and they walked out of DC. Mitch McConnell adjourned the Senate yesterday, Thursday at 2:55 p.m. for 93 hours, and they're out of session, and everyone else is out of luck. And we will see foreclosures and evictions and just decimating the economy. And, it's unbelievable to me. It's the same unbelief, Jocelyn, but I want to just wax one more artistic.
No, of course. Piece, please.
Which is, I think Michael Phelan at Social Security Works would judge me for saying that The Fifth Element has anything to do with art. But Luc Besson's Fifth Element is a fantastic movie. And there's a part in it that I think escaped me for a while, but it was the question of why the human is making a deal with the nothing, the destruction of all. So the person who watches the world burn, and what is the deal that he makes? It's for extra seconds. Mm-hmm. After everything else is gone, he'll get just a little bit more time. And I usually have that in my head as the cartoon villains who are watching the world burn, and they're sitting on their piles of money, and they know that they are causing this, but they just believe that if their pile of money is big enough, that maybe the flames aren't going to reach them. And I can't grok how out of touch they are, that they think that maybe this one will pass them by. It's not going to pass them by. The billionaires should be the first ones who are lining up to give part of their money to the state so that we could have a functioning response to this, to keep things going. Because out of the chaos which we're in and which will only grow, they're going to lose too. They don't get any extra time.
Yes. And that's exactly, again, why I personally am just baffled. So I don't know if the average person really understands, like, obviously no one likes Mitch McConnell, but I don't know if the average person really understands how just completely brazen it is to, in general, make a partisan habit of just not passing anything, of just letting bills die. We have the HEROES Act, which I think Alex and I can both agree doesn't really go far enough, but it does certain things. It renews the unemployment benefits. It provides a second round of stimulus checks. There are other forms of relief in there that are important.
Personal protective equipment, testing, spacing, isolating. It's almost $4 trillion. It's definitely better than zero.
Absolutely. Passed by the House in May. May. It is now August. And that means in the biggest economic, and I don't even know what you want to call it. Like, it's so much bigger than just a pandemic, but it's this
emergency.
Right. Just national
emergency.
global emergency we have seen in our generation, and hopefully we'll see in our generation. A Republican-led Senate has literally just not done anything. It's not like they've submitted changes to the HEROES Act they'd like to see. No. They haven't done anything. Mitch McConnell's legacy, and he is proud of this, and he's quoted as being proud of this, is leading a graveyard. This is a man who himself is worth millions of dollars, has led a Senate which just doesn't provide any service whatsoever. And so what you have is a country that is essentially held hostage by its governing body. Mitch McConnell's Senate does not govern. It's not, and it's not planning to change. That's his MO. This isn't an accident. This isn't a one-off. This is what he does.
And I think some evidence to it is that it's not that he doesn't do anything, right? Because last week,
that's a good point.
They passed $800 billion for the Pentagon. He doesn't do nothing. He does lots of things. They're just all bad. If it benefits the plutocrats, he can get it done. And then if it doesn't, he does nothing. And then what he always does, and what some people fall for, and I am actually meaner to them than to almost anyone else, is the people who fall for his spin now. Because his MO is, he says it openly, the graveyard. It's the legislative graveyard. You can call him the Grim Reaper. And now we're going to call him the Grim Reaper in real life, because it's tens of thousands of deaths that are on his hands. But he always tries to jujitsu it so that it looks like it's both sides, So at the last minute, Donald Trump and McCarthy were like, oh, well, let's just extend unemployment. And so some people who don't pay attention are like, oh, well, why didn't they take that offer? And you're like, because that's not on offer. Because that's not Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell doesn't have that on offer. What he has on offer is he was willing to extend unemployment as long as every corporation got an ironclad liability shield for 5 years, so that they could do anything they wanted to their workers. And to think that, the billionaires won't. Look at what the meat packing industry did to meat packers. They faked a meat shortage. They created news about a fake shortage that pushed the president to classify workers as essential, not allow them to not go back to work. He forced workers into meat packing plants that were unsafe and led to death. And now the only concern that the Grim Reaper has is that these corporations, that all corporations will not be held liable for doing that, for killing their workers. That's the only thing that Mitch McConnell is fighting for. But somehow, and he's willing to hold everything hostage for it, but somehow some people still fall for, oh, well, it's both sides. It's not both sides. The HEROES Act passed in May. That's the Democratic offer. The Republicans have done nothing, no counter offer, no negotiations until 4 days ago. They didn't even have the negotiation between the Republican White House and the Republican Senate set. That happened on Monday. It was out on Tuesday. And now unemployment has lapsed. The economy has cratered 33%. And Mitch McConnell still will not move on allowing billionaire plutocrats to not face any liability for killing their workers. That's what this debate is about. That's what the Republicans are fighting for.
Well, and it's sorry, as you're talking, I'm just seeing red. It's so difficult to really explain to people that, yes, Democrats need to move left on a lot of issues. Democrats are also populated by congressional and senatorial millionaires. Sure, that's a problem that both sides have. But there really aren't words to describe and narrate the brazen criminality of the modern American Republican Party. there just aren't words, because there's certain civil etiquette that has existed throughout history. Like, you know, the general idea that people are acting in good faith for the common good of their country. They may, you know, skim a little off on the side for themselves. Who could blame them? They're powerful people. That is not what's happening. What is happening is a group of people that are super happy to let a large portion of the country outright die, be homeless, be evicted, for literally no reason. There are the resources. We are living in the richest time in American history. There are absolutely the resources to cut just a basic check to every family to get us through this pandemic. There are absolutely resources to get hospitals all the respirators they need. The resources are there. And instead, what we have is a Republican Congress or Republican Senate that is busy trying to turn billionaires into trillionaires, and they're succeeding. The billionaire class has profited off of the deaths of 150,000 Americans in this pandemic. And why are we comfortable with that? It blows my mind.
And so I will also say that the billionaire class they've made money during the pandemic. That's absolutely true. But the crash that's coming, it will hit them just as hard as everybody else. I mean, they're going to be in their palaces and whatnot, but there is no escaping it. And so the nihilism that it takes to be Mitch McConnell, the belief in nothing, the nothingness that you have to support, to believe that it's fighting for that just a little bit of extra time as everything is engulfed in this conflagration. That's Mitch McConnell, the nothingness. But there's this other piece of it, which, you know, is the Donald Trump side. This is literally just the brazen criminality side. It's a gang that's looking to make money out of their political positions. Yes. They are the ones who want to skim a little bit because they feel they deserve it because they're powerful. And we hold them accountable just as we do the nothingness of Mitch McConnell. I don't know if you saw the Vanity Fair story. This should be, everyone should.
No, what Vanity source?
So Jay Cush, you know, the palace failure, the stepson. I'm sorry, not stepson.
Oh, is that what we're calling him now? Jay Cush?
I call him Jay Cush because I feel like he'd hate it. If he liked it, I would immediately come up with something else. But the beltless wonder that is Jared Kushner, he never wears a belt with his Dockers. And I don't know why, but he's the beltless wonder. He pulled together his criminal buddies, his college roommate, and they actually designed a national testing strategy. It's not actually that hard, right? Like, if nothing else, you could just look at other countries and be like, hey, just do that here.
Yes.
They came up with it. And Vanity Fair actually has it, and the reporting on it is really important. They spiked it. Donald Trump and Jay Cush himself. So Ivanka's right there. They're supposed to be the nice ones, right? Criminals, but they're supposed to be the like, oh yeah, but they bring the soul to. No, they don't. They're worse than Donald. They chose to spike the national testing program, which now ensures that we can't open the schools safely, probably can't open them at all, but definitely not safely. And the reason was because it would benefit blue state people. So the people who were dying at that time were primarily in blue states, in New York, in California, and out west. And so they came up with a strategy of not having a federal response and putting it onto the states, even though that's impossible for the states to actually do a coordinated response. It's the point of the federal government and a federated government. They decided as a strategy to put it on the states so that the governors would take the blame, because it was mainly people in blue states who were dying. So think about that. we've got Mitch McConnell and his nothingness. It's just all about protecting the corporate overlords. But this other part of the Republican Party and the two of them married together is the grossest chimera that's ever graced the political stage, is what we've got right now in the modern Republican Party.
Well, and, I think it's really important. Oh, I'm just getting chills because everything you're saying is true. It's really important to remember that history is not a linear path, because as you talk, it's, I think this is a fallacy of modern political perception that people tend to forget. Like, oh, well, we're in modern times, so clearly those are the more progressive ones. No. It is absolutely possible for things to get worse. And everything you're talking about is a perfect example of that. We are in a time where it really just is important to not, watch mob movies if you want to understand the current administration. Like, that is who is ruling us right now. And unless we take that very seriously and use it as an excuse and a catalyst to mobilize, that is what we're going to get, because it's not just Trump, like you're saying. And it's not even just McConnell at this point. This is a culture that these people have bred. So, like, we get rid of them. This is now the status quo for the modern Republican Party. It has to be disbanded. And then the corporate Democrats can be the Republicans, because they kind of already are. I mean,
and then we get to Donald Trump saying that he's going to delay the election, and then you're there, right?
Yes.
And then you're there at fascism and the federal shock troops of the Department of Homeland Security, pulling people, kidnapping people in Portland and in other cities around the country. And this is not. Things do fall apart. The idea that it can't happen here has to be exploded with absolutely mercilessly, because it can happen here. The only thing that can stop it from happening here is us, is solidarity, is people coming together, refusing to be divvied up into little silos, and standing together, raising our voices together, and demanding that the government work for us, reminding everyone of our own power, that the government is us, and that these unaccountable plutocrats in Washington, D.C., they only get their power from us, and it's time that we take that power away, and we create a society that's working for the people and not the billionaires. Jocelyn, you want to sign us off?
That was such a good sign off. How am I supposed to compete with that, Alex? You guys, thank you so much for being with us this morning. There's a lot to be really frustrated with, but at the end of the day, the darkness before the light and all that cliche stuff is there for a reason. These are the times that mobilize people to really re-seize their country and create a system that doesn't allow for this kind of violence in the begin with. And I really hope that's what we're working towards. Solidarity forever.
See you next week.
Bye.